Hey there, and welcome to another episode of The Social Lens. I'm your host, Beatrice Goodwin, and today we're diving deep into one of the most fascinating and frankly unsettling aspects of human existence: socialization. Now, before you click away thinking this is going to be some dry academic lecture, stick with me, because what we're about to explore will fundamentally change how you see yourself, your relationships, and the invisible forces that have been shaping your thoughts since the day you were born. Imagine this. You're sitting in a coffee shop and you watch someone ahead of you in line say, "Please" and "thank you" to the barista. Seems normal, right? But here's the thing. That person wasn't born knowing to say those words. Someone, somewhere along the line, taught them that this was the right way to behave. And if they didn't say it, they'd probably feel wrong, guilty, embarrassed. That, my friends, is socialization in action. And today, we're going to pull back the curtain on this massive, complex system that's been operating on all of us since we took our first breath. We'll explore how it starts in our families, how it can go terribly wrong, how it battles with our deepest biological drives, and how some people, particularly introverts, experience this whole process differently. So buckle up, because we're about to question everything you thought you knew about why you think the way you think. Let's start with the basics. Psychologists define socialization as the method through which children are taught to think and act in accordance with societal norms and expectations. Sounds innocent enough, doesn't it? But here's where it gets interesting and a little disturbing. According to this definition, a person is considered well socialized when they believe in and adhere to the moral code of their society, integrating as an effective member within it. But here's the kicker. The moral expectations of society are often so rigorous that it's virtually impossible for individuals to always think, feel, and act in a wholly moral way. Think about it. Society tells us we shouldn't harbor hate, but come on. Almost everyone experiences feelings of hatred at some point. Maybe it's that coworker who takes credit for your ideas, or the neighbor who plays music too loud at 2 a.m. The emotion is human, it's natural, but society says it's wrong. Now, most of us can handle this cognitive dissonance. We feel the hate, we acknowledge it, maybe we deal with it, and we move on. But some people, and this is where things get really fascinating, have been socialized to such an extreme degree that they can't handle having any thoughts or feelings that contradict accepted moral standards. This is what psychologists call oversocialization, and it's far more common than you might think. Imagine constantly striving to act morally to the point where it becomes an overwhelming burden. These oversocialized individuals frequently deceive themselves about their true motivations and create elaborate moral justifications for their actions and feelings that aren't genuinely rooted in morality. They're essentially living in a state of constant psychological warfare with themselves. The effects are devastating. Low self-esteem, feelings of powerlessness, defeatism, and chronic guilt. How does this happen? Well, one primary way society socializes children is by instilling shame for behaviors or speech that deviate from societal expectations. If this is overdone, or if a child is particularly sensitive to stigma, they end up feeling intrinsic shame about themselves. Here's what's really wild. Unlike the average person who might occasionally lie, commit petty theft, or navigate social situations in underhanded ways, over-socialized individuals struggle with even having thoughts or feelings that contradict moral standards. They're psychologically constrained, living lives completely dictated by societal rules and expectations. And here's where it gets politically interesting. There's a compelling argument that a significant faction of modern leftists, particularly intellectuals and members of the upper middle class, are characterized by this over-socialization. University intellectuals, for instance, represent one of the most socially conforming yet left-leaning groups in society. Their high degree of socialization plays a crucial role in shaping their political outlooks and actions. Now, This might seem contradictory. How can people who appear to be rebels against the status quo actually be oversocialized? The answer lies in understanding that many leftists aren't as rebellious as they appear. Though they present themselves as challengers of the system, their actions and beliefs are still heavily shaped by societal norms, just different norms than traditional conservative ones. This insight reveals how deeply societal conditioning can affect not just personal beliefs, but entire political movements and ideologies. It's a sobering reminder that even our rebellion might not be as authentic as we think it is. Now let's talk about where this whole process begins. And it might surprise you to learn that it's not where most people think the real action happens. Socialization begins within the family environment when very young children start recognizing that adults are reliable sources for information, entertainment, and support. Picture a 2-year-old learning to play independently for a brief period so a parent can help an older sibling with homework, or an 8-year-old learning not to practice piano during a younger sibling's nap time. These aren't just cute family moments. They're the foundation of social conditioning. Within the family, children learn crucial lessons about shared living spaces, mutual respect, and putting others' needs above their own self-interests. They witness love through actions and model unselfishness and conflict resolution. The family serves as a dynamic socialization agent where children interact with multiple generations, gaining diverse perspectives. But here's where the plot thickens. In contemporary society, peer groups become prominent early on. We're talking children as young as 5 forming exclusive social circles or cliques. And the criteria for acceptance? Superficial things like clothing choices, popular toys, and familiarity with trending TV shows. This creates a fundamental conflict in a child's socialization process. The family teaches values like kindness, grace, and consideration for others. But peer groups, they reward social prowess and toughness. They shift a child's focus from living with compassion to simply surviving socially, creating environments where only the strongest thrive. Christopher Klicka, a homeschool advocate, points out that children educated at home are actually socialized through diverse community involvements. Little League, Scouts, music lessons, art classes, field trips. These experiences allow parents to guide their children on how to effectively relate to others while maintaining family values. But in traditional school settings, peer groups often challenge these family-taught values. They encourage children to either follow the directions of the most popular child or strive to become that popular child themselves. This push toward popularity can lead to a neglect of intelligence and character. Think about your own childhood for a moment. Can you remember the tension between what your parents taught you was right and what would make you popular at school? Maybe your parents emphasized honesty, but the cool kids rewarded clever lies. Maybe your family valued academic achievement, but your peers thought studying was uncool. This battle between family socialization and peer socialization is one of the defining struggles of growing up. And increasingly, peer socialization is winning. Despite societal trends that tend to devalue the family's role, research suggests that the family remains crucial for developing emotional intelligence, empathy, and genuine moral reasoning. The tragedy is that when peer socialization dominates, we often lose the very qualities that make us most human. Our capacity for genuine connection, our ability to think independently, and our willingness to stand up for what we believe is right, even when it's not popular. Now we're going to venture into some really deep waters, the relationship between socialization and our most fundamental biological drives. This is where things get both fascinating and a little scary. Sigmund Freud talked about the postponement of gratification, and it presents an interesting conundrum within civilization. Here's the thing. Civilization fundamentally relies on the repression of individual desires to maintain social order. Socialization is essentially the process of making individuals dependent on social controls, teaching them to respond predictably to rewards and punishments. The most effective form of socialization occurs when people internalize societal norms so deeply that they can't even conceive of breaking the rules. But this process doesn't work alone. It's augmented by our biological needs and genetic conditioning, which serve as powerful allies in making us work towards societal goals. Let's talk about control mechanisms. Historically, societies have used the threat to survival instincts as a primary form of control. Populations in oppressed nations often comply with conquerors to preserve their lives. Even in advanced societies like Great Britain, law enforcement frequently relied on harsh punitive measures: caning, whipping, mutilation, or death. But when social systems don't exploit the fear of pain, they typically use pleasure as an inducement to follow societal norms. The notion of the good life acts as a reward for a lifetime spent working and following laws, capitalizing on cravings rooted in our genetic makeup. Here's where it gets really interesting. Whether it involves sexual desires, aggression, the aspiration for security, or openness to change, various aspects of human nature have been used by politicians, churches, corporations, and advertisers to control individuals. During the Ottoman Empire, potential military recruits were lured with promises of plundering rewards from conquered territories. Modern military recruitment advertisements promise the opportunity to see the world, tapping into our sense of adventure and exploration. But here's the crucial insight. This pursuit of pleasure isn't actually a pursuit of personal advantage. It's a reflex programmed in our genes for the survival of the species. The enjoyment of eating ensures proper nourishment. The pleasure of sexual activity encourages reproduction, ensuring genetic continuity. When you're physically attracted to someone, you might think it's your personal desire, but often it's simply your invisible genetic code pursuing its agenda. Now, there's nothing inherently wrong with indulging in these genetic predispositions, as long as you acknowledge their nature and retain control over them. The problem arises from the contemporary trend of considering our internal feelings as the pure voice of nature. Many people place their trust solely in instinct, believing that whatever feels good or appears natural must be correct. This is dangerous territory. Abandoning yourself to natural instincts without question relinquishes personal responsibility. If we accepted every innate urge simply because it exists, this would be fatalism. Humans are born ignorant, which implies a need for learning and improvement over our basic nature. Consider this. Some individuals may produce excessive androgens leading to higher aggression levels, but that doesn't mean they should act out violently. Nature presents facts, but it doesn't absolve us from trying to improve those facts. Unchecked submission to genetic predispositions makes individuals helpless against ineffective programming. A person who can't transcend genetic instructions when necessary remains perpetually susceptible to manipulation. Without control, you live according to your body's programming rather than personal goals you deem worthwhile. To achieve true autonomy and independence from society, mastering control over instinctual drives is imperative. As long as you respond habitually to what feels pleasurable or painful, you remain susceptible to exploitation by those who may manipulate these preferences for personal gain. Being thoroughly socialized means you desire only those rewards society dictates, often superimposing these desires on your genetic inclinations. In such cases, potentially fulfilling experiences might go unnoticed, overshadowed by desires that align with societal expectations. Meaningful experiences are overshadowed by external conformity, emphasizing anticipated rewards over authentic achievements and aspirations. The goal isn't to suppress your humanity, but to understand it well enough to make conscious choices about when to follow your instincts and when to transcend them. Now let's explore how a significant portion of the population, introverts, experience this entire socialization process differently. And trust me, understanding this will shed light on why our society might be missing out on some of its most valuable insights. Introverts are often mischaracterized as reclusive individuals too shy to participate in social activities. But this generalization completely misses the complexity of the introverted experience. Many introverts actually have vibrant social lives and frequently enjoy social interactions. They just do it differently. Here's a key distinction. Introverts feel drained by crowds and need solitude to recharge, while extroverts draw energy from interacting with others. This doesn't mean introverts shun all social interaction. On the contrary, many introverts appreciate and enjoy socializing, particularly with close friends who contribute to meaningful and fulfilling interactions. While extroverts often attend social gatherings with eagerness to meet new people, introverts cherish the company of familiar and trusted individuals. They prefer intimate, one-on-one interactions over larger group dynamics. Where extroverts might have extensive networks of friends and acquaintances, introverts nurture a select group of close friendships characterized by depth and longevity. Solitude is a source of joy and rejuvenation for introverts. They value spending time alone, engrossed in activities they find pleasurable. Reading, watching movies, taking leisurely walks through serene parks, savoring the sounds of nature over conversations. This isn't antisocial behavior. It's how they process the world and recharge their mental batteries. Research indicates that introverts are more susceptible to distractions than extroverts, which explains their preference for calmer, more serene environments. Bustling and chaotic environments can be particularly overwhelming, making them feel unfocused and scattered. But here's what's really fascinating from a socialization perspective. Introverts are often more self-aware than their extroverted counterparts. They dedicate considerable time to introspection, contemplating their thoughts and experiences. This self-reflective nature enables them to gain deep understanding of their own identities and develop resistance to certain forms of social conditioning. Think about it. If you're someone who naturally questions, reflects, and processes internally, you're less likely to simply accept societal norms without examination. Introverts often present as reserved and observant, leading to misconceptions about shyness. But they're actually being strategic about their energy expenditure in social interactions. They're deliberate with their words, valuing meaningful conversation over idle chatter. This selectivity extends to their relationship with socialization itself. While they may conform to basic social norms, they're often more resistant to peer pressure and less likely to change their values simply to fit in. This creates an interesting dynamic in our extrovert-dominated society. Many social institutions, schools, workplaces, social media platforms are designed with extroverted interaction patterns in mind. Large groups, constant stimulation, quick responses, surface-level networking. For introverts, navigating these environments requires significant energy and can feel like swimming upstream. But here's the thing. This resistance to conventional socialization patterns might actually be a strength. Introverts' tendency toward introspection and meaningful connection could serve as a counterbalance to some of the more harmful aspects of oversocialization we discussed earlier. Their rich inner worlds allow them to navigate life uniquely, finding balance between social engagement and precious solitude. They're often less susceptible to the kind of peer pressure that can override family values, and more likely to maintain authentic relationships rather than pursuing popularity for its own sake. In many ways, introverts represent a quiet revolution against the more superficial aspects of social conditioning. They demonstrate that it's possible to be socially functional while maintaining individual authenticity and depth of thought. So here we are at the end of our journey through the complex landscape of human socialization. We've explored how society shapes our minds from birth, how families and peers wage war for our values, how our own biology can be turned against us, and how some people naturally resist these forces. The picture that emerges is both sobering and hopeful. Sobering because it reveals just how much of what we consider our authentic selves has been carefully crafted by external forces. Hopeful because understanding these mechanisms gives us the power to make more conscious choices about which influences we accept and which we resist. The key insight from our exploration is this: socialization is inevitable and necessary, but over-socialization is dangerous and dehumanizing. We need social norms to function as a society, but we also need individuals who can think independently, question authority, and maintain authentic relationships. But wait, the story of socialization doesn't just end here. It goes beyond your peer groups and occasional meetups. Real socialization goes far beyond this, beneath the surface of your office conversations, and even on the internet, thanks to social media. Ever wondered how to navigate those realms? Or what actually happens when you go head first in these zones? Don't worry, we've got you covered. Download the Scoob app now from App Store or Play Store and get a hang of the full story of the various dynamics of socialization. Check the full podcast and acknowledge the forces that shaped you while still choosing to reshape yourself. You can be socially functional without being socially controlled. The puppet strings are real, but you don't have to dance to someone else's tune. And that, my friends, is the beginning of true freedom. So what are you waiting for?